Welcome in to the Pro Football Radio Podcast. Welcome in to an emergency podcast, a podcast that was not scheduled tonight, but we had to jump on to talk about some breaking news.
We had to.
And Puma, I've been waiting for this day for a long time.
I bet you
I
have,
been
Jay.
waiting for this day for a long time. And the time has come where Bill Belichick has been fired by the New England Patriots, and we're here to talk all about it. Now, First things first, Puma, let's get out of the way. On this podcast, we are not going to call it a mutual parting of the ways. We're going to call it what it was. It was a straight up firing, all right? So before I, come out here with all my hate about Bill Belichick, I want to give you the floor real quick and let you react to Bill Belichick getting fired by the New England Patriots today.
Yep. I mean, Jay, it's I know it's Liberation Day for Jay Chima here, and you've been banging this drum for pretty much since we've met. I mean, you've been saying that it was essentially all Brady, but that's a different discussion. But
no, same discussion.
My initial reaction is this was always the end. Like it was fait accompli, and a lot of people are going to say, it was the Indianapolis game in Germany that was like the nail in the coffin, and yeah, rightfully so. But for me, I've always hearkened it back to like 2 or 3 years ago when they spent like drunken sailors in free agency, and the only people that hit in that entire spending spree was Matthew Judon and Hunter Henry. Like everything else was a miss. The Mac Jones experiment was a miss, right now. And I mean, you pretty much call that on draft night because you've seen more of him.
Can I ask you a question?
Careers, but
what have been wrong about with the Patriots so far since you've known me?
I mean, so far you're about 1,000. That'll get you in the Hall of Fame.
Just saying.
But you have a lot of these people saying like, oh, like Bill was forced out, like he had a plan and people weren't executing it. And I always kind of hearken it back to that quote of, Vince McMahon after the Montreal screw job.
You're fired. Is that it?
No, not even that. Where people were saying like, oh, like you screwed Brett, and Vince McMahon in Vince McMahon fashion said, I did not screw Bret Hart. Bret Hart screwed Bret Hart. And this was almost like Bill Belichick, the general manager, got Bill Belichick, the head coach, out of this job in New England. I mean, you can go back to the drafts, you can go back to the free agency, like the whole Tom Brady situation. But to me, like the writing was on the wall after the free agency spending spree. The nail in the coffin was the Bozo Deluxes at offensive coordinator last year. And then like the pallbearers putting him down in the hole was the Indianapolis game. Like this was always going to happen. That wet dream of him like giving up general manager duties was exactly that, a dream. There was no way that was ever going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So, let's talk about how we got here, right? Because ultimately for me, I don't need to react to it. I kind of knew this was coming. I knew this is a long time coming. It's just part of the inevitable cycle of what was going to happen with New England Patriots and Bill Belichick, right? And I think how we got here, and I think for me, the nail in the coffin was forcing Tom Brady out the back door. Like I will never be able to get over that. It is something that I believe Bill Belichick needs to pay with his job, and I think that's part of the reasoning in the back of Robert Kraft's mind that he always knew like Brady went out there year one, I won a Super Bowl, and you convinced me to do it, right? So I think that's really kind of like where the New England Patriots as a franchise started looking at Bill Belichick in a different light, right? Coupled out the fact that the guy has had now 10 years worth of data as a head coach without Tom Brady, 5 in Cleveland and now 5 in New England. And out of those 10 years, his record is something like 78 wins and 85 losses. Like it's a below 500 record without Tom Brady. And I know it's hard for people to like fathom, but we just gotta call a spade a spade. He's a below average coach without Tom Brady. Like I don't know why that's so hard to say. His record dictates he's below average without Tom Brady. So coupled with the fact, Puma, that like all those narratives that we had about Bill Belichick, about how he's this great genius defensive mind, he develops talent, he can take anybody and put him in the system, blah 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 blah. And the question I really got to ask you is, when's the last time he developed a player? Like, when's the last time you can honestly point to a player that he developed? I mean, who is it? Is it Jacoby Myers, who's gone now? Like, is it Kyle Duggar, who's he's a fringe safety? Like, most of his star talent like comes over the last couple of years have come out of free agency, and other than that, there hasn't been much there at all. So there's a lot that goes into this when Robert Kraft makes this decision, but I do think it's for the best. It's best for the New England Patriots moving forward, because with Belichick, you're not going anywhere fast at all.
Well, I'll do you one better. Remember, I think it was Mac Jones' rookie year, right? In the back end, like they essentially backed into the playoffs, right? And once that season ended, after they got their teeth kicked in Buffalo, you heard all these reports coming out of the locker room essentially tuned the coaches out. Like, when that doesn't happen in a Belichick system. And I understand, like, everyone wants to have the reverence of, all right, Bill is the air quote, the greatest of all time. And, there's a debate on how we got there. But, the fact is, like, you also have to be able to do an indictment on, everything and how we got here. And when you have players tuning you out, and then you start doing this experiment with Joe Judge and Matt Patricia,
I mean,
you
even
have
that
to, you
Puma,
have to pay for that.
even that, like, let's be real about that. Like, this year, they scored like 24 points a game last year under that offense. This year they're like at 17. Like, it's not just Patricia and Judge. Like, that was more of a Mac Jones thing. Like, I mean, I get it. We can bury Belichick with that, but ultimately, like, I think Puma, there's a lot more when somebody has this much power, Puma, when you've amassed so much power over 24 years, it's going to be hard for somebody to come to you with new ideas. It's going to be hard for somebody to not walk around you with eggshells, because you're such a big power, because you're so big that, like, it's just your way or the highway. There's no other, like, train of thought at all. And I think that's doing a disservice to the New England Patriots at this moment.
Right. But we can't be surprised either at the same time, because we've been talking about it for 2+ years now, that Kraft started laying down the gauntlet of, we need to get to the playoffs. And then last year it was, not only do we need to get to the playoffs, like, we need to win a playoff game. And it was almost like implied this year, like, we need a deep run in the playoffs. So he kept moving that goalpost, and it became obvious early on that was not going to happen. So at some point, Bill was going to make Kraft, like, call his bluff. Like, are you going to fire me, or are you going to keep just giving people lip service? Like you say, like, we're going to have the Dallas Cowboys and we're going to keep rolling you out there and talking about the glory years. And to a certain extent, like, you're going to start seeing that, because, I mean, hell, is it kind of convenient timing, Jay, that the mutual parting of ways happens a week or two before this Dynasty series comes out on Apple TV? I'm not a big coincidence guy, but some people might have different opinions on that. So this is if this is a shock to anybody, you're one of two things. Either you clearly have not been paying attention for the last 4 years, or you just have blind devotion to the man.
Go ahead and call him. Go ahead and call him what we call him, the Belichick Peen Suckers.
I mean, you can call them that. I'll just say the sycophants, but I mean, you get the same point. Is you're just going to carry that water for nothing. I mean, I'm a Dolphins fan, dude. Like, clearly,
can I ask you a question?
Don Shula got fired for less, is all I'm going to say. And this man has had 4+ years post Brady and did nothing.
Can I ask you a question? When's the last time Bill Belichick's genius defense stopped a good quarterback? I'll wait. Not this year, right? Any single time he plays Zach Wilson, or he plays, name me an awful quarterback, he'll beat them, right? But any single time that, like, he plays a Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers last year, or whoever it is, all these great quarterbacks, he gets carved up. Like, I truly think
last year.
What's up?
I said Dak lit him up last year. Remember that overtime
game? I truly believe this man's aura is bigger than what he actually is. I truly believe this man has had the biggest free ride in the history of NFL sports, or in the history of sports, in my opinion. Like, he must have made a deal with the devil or something, bro, somewhere along the line, because I've never seen somebody with such little talent be revered for so much. So, I mean, that's as harsh as I'm going to get about it, because I don't want to go down this, like, negative rabbit hole, because this is a good day for me. This is a happy day for me.
This is a happy day. It's J. Chiba Liberation Day.
Yes, yes. And this next question, I'm not even gonna answer because I could care less. I could care less where he
All
goes. I'm
right,
just done.
I'll
I just
I'll
put this in
answer
here
this.
for you. You know what I'm saying? So you
I'll
answer this,
answer
and then we'll
this.
move on
Okay.
because I do not care about you, Bill Belichick. You
Okay.
fucking bum. All right,
Wow.
sorry. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so that's GT mistake. He can go
All
be
right,
the
sorry. I'm
greeter
trying. I'm
at
trying to keep it.
Walmart.
Trying to keep it down.
So, I mean, logically, to me, it's the Falcons are the leader in the clubhouse. Arthur Blank, he missed out on a couple of big name guys in the past, and he just had Arthur Bozo the Clown Smith as his head coach. Um, I just I don't know how it's going to work because we know that Bill Belichick wants to have front office say, and the say what you want about the Falcons coaching over the last 2 years with Arthur Smith, like Terry Fontenot, the general manager for the Falcons. I honestly think he's done a decent job in the draft the last couple of years with Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson and Drake London, and I mean even the fantasy football vulture known as Tyler Algiers. I guess last year was his rookie year out of BYU. I mean, they have starting to amass talent on that roster. Now it's going to be, they're picking seventh. They're going to need a quarterback because Desmond Ritter's not it, and Taylor Heineke, I don't think he's going to be there even as a bridge guy. So what are you going to do from that front? But I think Falcons are the leader in the clubhouse. I'm not going to buy the Chargers bit. I think that's Jim Harbaugh's job to lose. Essentially, it sounds like he's going to jump to the NFL. People were saying the Raiders. I find it very hard to believe that he's going to work for a team where the quarterback he essentially ran out of town is a part owner in the franchise. The other one, Jay, if you want to play like the let's get nuts scenario, and that's what we do on the Pro Football Radio podcast, we get nuts sometimes. We go off
Very
the
nuts.
board.
Big nuts.
He's 16 wins
Lots of
away
nuts.
from the Don Shula record, right?
He's also like a couple losses away from the all-time
Okay.
losses record as well.
Just humor me. Just humor me. 16 wins away, right? Ish. Okay. So what if, hypothetically, the Maras, they get rid of John, they get rid of Brian Daboll. I mean, there were a point in time this season where Brian Daboll was on borrowed time. I didn't think he was going to make it past Thanksgiving. What if the Maras bring him in? He gets that Don Shula record as a New York Giant, and it just all comes full circle. He went from the special teams coordinator to defensive coordinator to he comes back to the Meadowlands and breaks that Don Shula record.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. I don't care where he goes. I don't fear him. He's a bum. Don't care. Leave. Goodbye. All right. Let's move on. Who will coach the Patriots next year? So ultimately, the way I see this going is we need to essentially modernize the New England Patriots franchise, right? So we need to go from the old way of thinking. We need to go to a traditional GM, head coach, all that, right? Blah blah blah. And ultimately, for me, I think where the league is going, you always want to go ahead and target one of those Ben Johnson's, Bobby Slowick, all these like hot, offensive coordinators that come from that Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay tree, right? That's what I would like to do, right? Now, the only person that I would like to be the head coach of the New England Patriots that isn't a offensive mind is Mike Vrabel. I think Mike Vrabel is the perfect steward for this franchise. I think he knows what it takes to win there. He knew the accountability that needed in that locker room, that organization to win 3 Super Bowls. He was in those 3 Super Bowls. So I think for me personally, I would love a pairing like a who's that guy that was the GM for the Atlanta Falcons that used to be an ex Patriot guy?
I can see him.
Thomas Dimitrov.
Yes.
I like Thomas Dimitrov as the GM. Pair him with the Mike Vrabel, right? And I think you run this thing back, man. Like Mike Vrabel is the only person I would take that isn't a offensive genius to help run the Patriots move forward.
I can buy that. Logic to me would be Mike Vrabel, like you said. The other part of me thinks though, you kind of had like a gentleman's agreement in theory between Kraft and company and Gerard Mayo. And I just don't know if Kraft is going to dynamite that bridge with Gerard Mayo. I mean, the guy turned down an interview with, the Carolina Panthers, which looking back was probably a genius move because Tepper is just, if if Ted Turner, when he first bought the Atlanta Braves, and Dan Snyder, minus the sexual harassment and other peccadillos that he had going on, had a love child, it would be Dave Tepper as the owner of the Carolina Panthers. So he probably did himself a favor by turning down that interview. I just don't know if Kraft and the kid Jonathan Kraft would be willing to screw Gerard Mayo over in a sense.
But
I
Gerard
kind of
Mayo
feel like it's
is not.
Gerard.
But Gerard Mayo needs to wear some of the stench as well. Like, I mean, he's part of the problem here, right? Like, you think he's gonna think any differently than Bill Belichick? No, of course not, man. Like,
here's the way ownership's gonna spin it. You're gonna have the inside reporters coming out and the people that bang the drum for Kraft, right? They're gonna come out and say Gerard Mayo got big-footed every step of the way by Bill. You can already see those arguments being made that Gerard got big-footed. Kraft's going to put it out there, and that's going to justify Gerard Mayo being the head coach of the team.
I don't know.
Now,
give me Mike Vrabel.
Logic. Like you said, Vrabel would make sense. Slowik, I honestly don't think he's going to leave Houston at this point. Johnson, I think he's going to get a lot of buzz. Obviously, I think he'd be a leading candidate in Atlanta as well too. So that would be interesting to watch too. Also,
him with those offensive weapons would be nice.
But yeah. I think it's Gerard Mayo, Mike Vrabel, and then the field.
Okay. All right. Enough Belichick talk. I think we're done with him. He's in the past. You guys know how I feel about him. Absolute
dude.
Bomb.
Just wait. They're gonna change the policy to allow the him to be in the Ring of Honor or the Patriot Hall of Fame by next week. They're gonna change that whole waiting period. They'll have a whole wing named to him.
That's fine. Hilarious. Just get it over with so we can move on from this era. All right. All right. Now let's talk about your team, Puma. The Miami Dolphins are traveling to Kansas City to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. All right. Saturday night, 8 p.m. A game that I will not be watching because I am not paying for Peacock. All right. You will not get that money out of me. So I will be talking to you, getting insight on what you're seeing on the game. And then I will also be checking Twitter. So who got to win this game?
Chiefs. I mean, there's a world. Jay, you can't act surprised. I mean, look at this. Look at how the Dolphins have been the last 6 weeks, essentially. Okay. And now you're signing Bruce Irving off the street. You're signing, Ingram off of the practice squad to be starting on that defensive line. I mean, they were so dinged up last week against Buffalo after the, I believe it was the Van Ginkel injury. And then there was another injury at linebacker. They had Ingram dropping into coverage to try and cover the tight ends for Buffalo, Kincaid and Dawson Knox. And it was just an unmitigated disaster. The two times that, he did that and Josh Allen threw the ball their way. I think there were 30-yard gains for the two of them. I mean, Jay, it's the over-under when I got it earlier in the week, which was one of my best bets, was at 44.5. It is going to be the Planet Hoth from The Empire Strikes Back. So is there a world where the spread's 4.5 right now on pretty much the majority of sports books, where it's going to be minus 20 with the win chill factor? The Mahomes offense is not as prolific as it's been in years past. A lot of people have the case of the stone hands. However, you can run on this defense of Miami, but the same could be said about the Kansas City Chiefs defense. You can run on them too with Achane and, Mostert hopefully should be back. He logged some practices. He's officially questionable for this game. Jalen Waddle's officially questionable for this game. But it's just the road environment. I can't back. They couldn't get the job done against the Bills. And even still, Jay, let's play this game where the Browns, we live in a world where the Browns beat the Houston Texans on Saturday, right? And Buffalo handles their business against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And let's get nuts and say, Miami gets a upset win on the road in Kansas City. Cleveland goes on the road to Baltimore. And then Miami gets round 3 with the Buffalo Bills at Buffalo. I don't see that happening. We're just delaying the inevitable at this point. I'm saying this as a Dolphins fan. It's been a disappointing season.
Are you a Dolphins fan or no?
I'm realistic, Jay, because the fact of the matter is, if we haven't played tight at going out of halftime in a lot of these games, and to be quite frankly, if we handled our friggin' business against Tennessee almost 4 weeks ago, we wouldn't be in this situation. We would be having a home game against potentially the Pittsburgh Steelers. But this team, for some reason, when the lights are the brightest, particularly coming out of halftime, in a game where you have to have it, Mike McDaniel, Mr. Mark Anthony Jr. himself, who is great at calling an offense, all of a sudden gets a little bit too conservative. And here we are. So, if you were to make me pick a side betting wise, like I would take the 4.5 points with Miami, because any spread over a field goal, Kansas City does not cover at all. But I really want nothing to do with this game. I don't think we're going to win. I'm just being realistic here. It's going to take a Herculean effort, in my opinion, with how many injuries the Dolphins have. So call me a hater. I'm realistic. It is
Have
what
faith
it
in
is.
your team. Like Freddie said, have faith in your team, dog. Have faith
Okay.
in your team. You know,
I'll remember
I'm
that
taking.
when you
I'm
guys
taking
have blown me up in group chats.
I'm taking the Miami Dolphins to win, Puma. Let's go,
Okay.
Fins. Fins up. All right. Now, listen, ultimately, I get your point. Yes, there's a lot of issues with Miami Dolphins, Puma. But I think this team can go into Kansas City and beat the Chiefs. Mostly because, I'm not gonna lie to you, I think the Chiefs are gonna be collapsing here soon, bro. I think they're like on the brink of collapse. Like nobody wants to talk about it, but like they've been low key bad the last 6-7 weeks. They're like what, lost 4 out of
Jay,
5 games. What's up?
they've been low key bad all year, and yet
Yeah,
they
yeah,
still won their division, which is
yeah. Well,
something the Dolphins can't do.
that
And they've been
division.
great half the year.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: like, what's your biggest gripe here? Is it just an injury thing? Like, what? Like, do you feel like the vibe of the
Well,
team is off? Like, why can't
I can't
you
be
guys can
mad.
go? You guys can go toe to toe with that offense, in my opinion.
I can't be mad at the injuries because the injuries happen. My gripe is when it comes down to the brass tacks of the play calling at times, especially in the red zone, because the red zone has been like lava at times for this season, where
Yeah.
you're on the 2, you're inside the 5, Jake. Like you're inside the 5. You've had Achane, you have Mostert, you have Jeff Wilson. Like 2 out of those 3 can run in between the tackles, and for some reason, you want to throw the ball 3 times. And not even that, Jay. Not even that, Jay. You decided to do nonsensical bubble screens to wide receivers, where we saw what happened with that play in Germany where they did the bubble screen, and that cost them the game. So, yes, this defense can hang. But you have Xavier Howard out, which, looking back is probably addition by subtraction, because he hasn't been that great this year at times. But now you have Eli Apple going out there. And then you have Jalen Ramsey, who normally doesn't shadow anybody. So are they going to put him on Travis Kelce? Are they going to do what they did like they did in Germany, where they're going to put him on Rashee Rice and they're going to try to bracket Travis Kelce? But hey, you bracketed him with Xavier Howard with another cornerback in that game. And our set, Javon Holland, I think is questionable. Best case scenario is questionable. It's just a lot of the things, yes, injuries happen. Depth has been an issue with this team, especially on the defensive side of the football. But the play calling is how we got ourselves here, because the fourth quarter, when the lights were the brightest, Tua, as much as I've been a big fan of Tua this year, seemed to wilt a little bit when the bright lights were on.
Wow, didn't expect all that. Wow, Puma keeping it real. Good job, Puma. You have some integrity, okay?
Mm-hmm. Call it for like it is. If people want to lump me in the category of, Omar Kelly for being a realistic Dolphins fan, okay,
All right.
I'll be honored to be in that category.
All right, bros. Puma, bet this up and get out of here.
All right, so the Puma bets, I already got to a little bit in this game with one of them. I have a couple other ones in this game. So to recap, I am on the under 44. Actually, it wasn't 44 and a half. I got it at 44. A couple other people got it 43 and a half, but I got it 44. Under 44, Dolphins, Kansas City. It's going to be minus 30 degrees out. It's going to be the Planet Hoth from Empire Strikes Back. Nobody's going to really want to throw the football. Kansas City's got the case of the stone hands at the wide receiver position. And I think both teams are just going to try to establish the run, which leads me to my next bet, which is a player prop. 2 props for the same player. Look at that, 2-for-1 special right there. Isaiah Pacheco, over 15.5 rush attempts. I got that on, I want to say it was FanDuel. Got that on that book here. And then over 60.5 Isaiah Pacheco rush yards. So I think we're going to get there on volume alone. You can run on the Dolphins defense. And, oh, yeah, by the way, did I say it's going to be minus 20 with the wind chill? Because that's what it's going to be in Kansas City. The other one, we're going to go to the early wild card game on Saturday on Super Wild Card weekend. We're going to take the Cleveland Browns on the money line on the road in Houston. I think January Joe is going to rear its head again.
January Joe. Is that a real
January
thing?
January Joe Flacco, Bazooka Joe, whatever you want to call him. I'm gonna take the money line. I don't really want anything to do with the spread. Depending on what book you're at, I'm looking at DraftKings right now is -2 at -110. There's a lot of question marks with the special teams for Cleveland. Dustin Hopkins, I don't think is going to play, so I think it's the Cade York show again. If it's under a field goal, I don't really want to mess around with the spread with the lack of special team certainty, so I'm going to take them on the money line. I got it at -140. It's down to -135 just because of some of the injuries. Grant Delpit's not going to play. But I believe Denzel Ward, he hurt himself somehow in practice today or yesterday. So he dinged up his knee, but I expect him to play. Amari Cooper should be a go after sitting the last couple of weeks with a heel injury. But I like Joe in the Browns to win outright. I think Jim Schwartz is also going to throw the kitchen sink on the defensive side of the football at CJ Stroud. You might see a lot of cover 0 and cover 1 against him. And, he might get confused. He had a few issues against that type of defense earlier in the year. And also, I don't think Jim Schwartz is going to let Nico Collins run all over the field like the Indianapolis Colts did. So I'll lay it. I'll take the Cleveland Browns on the money line here. We're going to go to Jerry World, where I have.
Let's go. Go Pac-O. Go Pac-O.
I'm on the other side. I'm going to lay it. I got it. Dallas -7.5. Right now, if you look across the sports books, for the most part, it's Dallas -7. I'm going to take the 7.5. They've been so dominant at home, and Jordan Love's been a great story. He's been great. I'm a big Jordan Love guy. Yeah, well, hang on. Let me give up my pick, and then you can chime in there. All right. So I'm going to lay it with Dallas, dominant at home. Dan Quinn, who's also a buzzworthy candidate. I think he's the hot candidate right behind Mike Vrabel for a head coaching job. I think he's going to throw the kitchen sink at Jordan Love as well, too. So I'll lay it with Dallas -7.5. Also, going back to Dallas team total over 30.5, where most of this season at home, they've averaged over 37 points. And I understand people are going to push back and say, oh, well, they played the Giants. Oh, they played the Washington Commanders. Yeah, well, they also scored 30 or more against the Seattle Seahawks. They scored 30 or more against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I like the team total over here as well, too. I think this game is going to end with them getting 31 or more points for sure. And we're also going to go back to a player prop. I've hit a lot this year, which is Jake Ferguson receiving yards. I got Jake Ferguson over 41.5 receiving yards -130 on DraftKings earlier this morning. He's established himself as the kind of go-to guy in a gotta-need-it spot outside of CeeDee Lamb, especially in the underneath routes here. There's some injury concerns that, the defense for Green Bay has been dinged up from time to time, and I think he'll be the hot route on a lot of things underneath if, Joe Barry wants to attempt to dial up a blitz against Dak Prescott and this Dallas Cowboys team. So I like Jake Ferguson to get over 41 receiving yards. I think over the last 7 games, he's averaged about 8 targets, 6 receptions in all of them for the most part. So I think we'll get over this on volume alone as well, too. Another wild card game. We're going to go to Motown, the Motor City. We're going to take the Rams +3.5 on the spread. The spread's kind of been going back and forth between 3.5 and 3. I like the Rams here on the road. I get it. Detroit's been a fantastic story. The issue I have is I think last week, Dan Campbell and company spent more time griping about the referee still and whether or not this person reported or not instead of being smart and, hey, let's actually sit our starters. And it might cost them, Laporta for this game because he left the game last week with the knee injury. And, Jay, I've been on here, the pod, earlier this season saying, I like Detroit, but I think they're kind of in the fraud-ish category because I'm not sold on that defense. And even with CJ Gardner-Johnson coming back, Sean McVay is going to dial up the big play to Puka Nacua and to Cooper Kupp and hell, even Tyler Higbee. I might come back and look at some Tyler Higbee props a little bit later on tonight. But I think you're going to get the chunk plays here. Matthew Stafford, he's going to knock the team that he started his career off with out of the playoffs. And, once the Detroit Lions are actually good, he's going to kick them to the curb. And also Jared Goff, I know there's been a lot of talk of he still has a chip on his shoulder for how things went down in LA. And who better to know how to confuse Jared Goff than, I don't know, the coach that coached him in that offense and Sean McVay. I think Raheem Morris is going to be able to dial up some stuff. And, I know this defense has had issues getting pressure, but I think they're going to be able to get home. So give me the Rams plus 3.5. I wouldn't hate a little money line sprinkle, depending on what book you're looking at. The money line's around plus 136. So I wouldn't hate that look as well either. Now we're going to go to Buffalo, where you have the fighting Mike Tomlins and the Pittsburgh Steelers going on the road, getting 10 points against the Buffalo Bills. Give me all those daggone points. Give me all those daggone points. I'm going to take the Steelers, getting 10 points on the road. I mean, the weather looks like it's going to be god-awful in Buffalo. And I understand.
How about it's supposed to be?
I mean, you're going to get that lake effect snow. They're calling for high wind. So you might get a snow. It looks like it's going to be a snow game for kickoff on Sunday. So, in a game like that where you now have Joe Brady, trying to establish the run more with Cook. And then you look at Mike Tomlin that's going to try to run, Najee Harris and even Jalen Warren to a certain extent into the ground. I think they're going to be able to keep it within the 10. It also helps that Minkah Fitzpatrick is trending towards coming back for this game. So even though TJ Watt's not going to be there with the knee injury, but you have Minkah Fitzpatrick coming back. For KZ, I believe that's the player's last name. He got suspended after that hit on Michael Pittman. He'll be coming back as well, too. I mean, we saw what Josh Allen looked like in the first half against the Miami Dolphins. I mean, he had 3 turnovers. He fumbled the football. In reality, the Dolphins should have won by double digits. And no, I'm not still sore about that game. Absolutely not. So there is a chance where the Steelers can generate a turnover and have a short field, and maybe Najee Harris falls forward. Or, hell, maybe George Pickens gets that one big chunk play to get us through the back door. I'm going to take the 10 points with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And speaking of Najee Harris, give me his over 15.5 rush attempts for all the reasons I said as to why I like the Steelers to keep it close in this game, try to run and shorten the game down. And then lastly, we're going to go to Monday night, where we got the Philadelphia Eagles headed on back down to Tampa Bay, Raymond James Stadium, where they're taking on the NFC South champions in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The spread has been hovering around 3 points. I'm looking at it right now on DraftKings, the unofficial sports book of the Pro Football Radio podcast. Give me the 3 points with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, only because the Eagles have been god-awful for the last 6 or 7 weeks. Jalen Hurts has been essentially hurt since the Miami Dolphins game, and now he has a finger issue where it came out today that he hasn't thrown a football since Sunday because of that finger problem. A.J. Brown missed a practice today because of his knee injury that he sustained last week against the New York Giants. This defense has got awful. You have Hassan Reddick falling into coverage almost every other snap. Matt number 2 pencil Patricia looks absolutely clueless and I think he's actually worse than Desai, the former defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, who got demoted essentially. There seems to be issues with the locker room. In my opinion, there's a chance that if they lose this game, the Eagles, that is, Sirianni's probably going to be out of a job. I would not be surprised at all. Just because it just looks like there's issues in that locker room, and it kind of stems from him, in my opinion. So give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers getting 3. And also another one where the money line is at, around 136, depending on what book you're looking at. I want to hate a little money line sprinkle because out of all these teams playing on Super Wildcard Weekend, I think the Buccaneers could win outright. Like I think it could be an upset. I think they could move on just because of how bad the Eagles have been the last 2 months or so. Speaking of that, give me the under 44.5 in this game. You're looking at some possible weather issues, rain during the game, thunderstorms. The offense looks in flux, like I said, with the Philadelphia Eagles here. Baker Mayfield on the other side of the football, he's been dinged up. I mean, he's going to play because he's Texas tough, but give me the under 44.5. And lastly, a player prop. Give me Cade Otton over 21.5 receiving yards. And I understand there's a certain person in the chat that's been burned by Cade Otton as much as I have. However, it's 21.5. He's on the field for about 95% of the snaps. And I think the few times that the Eagles are going to attempt to dial up pressure on Baker Mayfield, I think Cade Otton's going to be the hot route to get the ball out quick. I think the Eagles are going to spend more time focusing on trying to stop Chris Godwin and Big Mike Evans, that there's going to be opportunities underneath for Cade Otton. Now, sure, is Rachaad White going to get some of those targets? Absolutely. But I think that there is a path for Cade Otton to get us 22 or more receiving yards. Just based on volume and opportunity alone, that's why I'm going to ride with the over for him.
Okay. 2 things for me. I love that bet of the Steelers, 10 points in Buffalo, which is a ridiculous number. I don't know how that's possible. And the second thing, take all the money you have, Puma, all the money you have, and put it on the Green Bay Packers upsetting the Dallas Cowboys at home. I am not buying into those dang on Dallas Cowboys. I'm sorry. Until they are in the Super Bowl, until they even make the NFC Championship game, I am not buying into that team. Let's go. Go, Pack, go. That's all I got to say.
Wow. So, Jay, like, I had a team, I put out the Bucs as, a team that could win outright for an upset. Like, are you in agreement with that? Or do you have a different team that you're looking at?
No, I'm not. I'm not. I don't buy into the Bucks hype. I think the Eagles get it together. I think they're good enough to steamroll the Bucks. It could get ugly, but outright, bro. Like, God, let's see. Like, I mean, I'm big on your Dolphins, bro. I just got a feeling about that game. There's no rhyme or reason for me. There's no real analysis I can give you that can tell you that the Dolphins will win that game. I just got a feeling. I think they hear it from every angle. I think they come out swinging. They're the one team that can go toe to toe, point for point on a good day with the Chiefs. Give me the Dolphins winning outright, bro.
Okay. It's going to be a fun weekend, and too bad you're not going to get Peacock so you can see Taylor Swift as well too.
I'm perfectly fine. I don't need the cock. I'm good.
What's going to be funny though is is Taylor Swift really going to go to a place where it's going to be minus 25 with wind chill? I highly doubt it. I think she's going to have one more tour stop in Buenos Aires, Argentina on Sunday or Saturday, whatever the fuck we're playing, instead of being in that fucking frozen hellhole known as Arrowhead Stadium.
All right, bro. Let's call it and get out of here, man.
All right, let's get the hell out of here. This episode of the pod, Pro Football Radio Podcast, can be found on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts on demand. YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. You get that little notification bell when we're about to go live, like moments like this. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, be sure to leave a 5-star review. Social media, Facebook, Instagram, Pro Football Radio Podcast, Twitter at PFR Podcast. I'm on the Twitter machine at Brando_Puma. Jay Chima, the captain of the ship on the ones and the twos, is at Jay Chima. DMs are open. Hit us up. Hopefully you guys enjoy Super Wildcard Weekend.
See ya.
Vaya con Dios!